So in the way of teaching meditation here, as you've likely already noticed, there's quite an emphasis on expanding our capacity for sensation, for that which arises in the physical body, in the emotional body, in the energy body, which we'll be spending a whole module on the energy body. And one benefit of this is that, as you've likely noticed, the mind tends to play a very dominant role in our lives, and also certainly in our meditation practice. The thing that people struggle with the most is the busyness and the way that the mind wants to steal all of our attention all the time. And as we go about our days as well, we tend to get very caught up in the mind and its interpretations, its beliefs, its thoughts about how things should be and how things shouldn't be, and what people should be doing. And all of that is just going on constantly, and we often don't even notice that we're totally hooked into that. And so most of us have not experienced living from a really embodied place, because we've been conditioned through our culture to spend a lot of time in the mind. We've learned this from our parents. We learned it from our culture. We learned it through the education system, where the mind is sort of king in a way. And we weren't taught how valuable being really present to the physical body and being really open to the range of feelings that we have. Most of us didn't have, and maybe still don't have, really true examples of people who are emotionally fluid and really embodied. I would say, the closest that I've seen to that is many of the native people. For them, who live in direct contact with nature all of the time, that's how they know. That's their way of knowing, is through their body, their feelings, their intuition, their sensations. And in a way, a lot of us Westerners are relearning this in order to weave ourselves back into life. So there's an emphasis on coming into the body and coming into sensations, because one of the things that makes the mind so dominant is that we just don't feel at home in our bodies. We've stuffed so many emotions, so many feelings, so much stress into our body that it's not hospitable in a way. As soon as we even drop into the body, we notice all of these uncomfortable sensations, and we just kind of rebound right back into the mind, and we want to tell stories maybe about what it is that we're feeling. So one of the key foundational teachings here is around learning to become more comfortable within the realm of sensation, so that there's less of an impetus to go into the mind. And of course, it's going to open doorways for energy and for the shared field and relational awareness and connection with the soul. And those are places we're going to be going in the future. But for now, I want to talk a little bit more tonight about this invitation to really open to the world of sensation, both the gross physical sensations as well as the subtler emotional and energetic sensations. And I want to look at the value of flooding our bodies with awareness. Flooding our bodies with awareness, meaning allowing awareness to slowly seep into deeper and deeper places in our being, so that we can reclaim all of those places that have been hidden. So our soul is tied up in a lot of the shadows that have really gone beneath the surface as a result of at some point believing that certain feelings or certain parts of ourselves weren't okay. And so flooding the body with awareness slowly sheds light on these places and invites them back into the folds of our awareness so that they can contribute to our expression as souls. So I just wrote some points here around the benefits of flooding the body with awareness in this way, and of gradually increasing our capacity for presence to the whole sensory experience. And the first one is that we begin to live more and more in our bodies. It becomes more and more comfortable to be living in our bodies. We begin to fill more of our being because, of course, we're not just a mind. And we begin to also, by living in our bodies, we begin to reap the benefits of that. So when we start living more fully in our bodies and opening to everything that we find there, there's a tendency to begin to be able to also hear the language of the body and to hear what it is the body is communicating to us in terms of its needs. So what I'm saying is, the more we bring awareness to the body, the more the body can guide us to those practices, to those choices that would be most nourishing for the body. So if we're living in our heads, it's very hard to consistently and effortlessly make the choices that are really aligned with what the body most needs. We often will do it from an intellectual place, but as we all know, that's very short-lived. But when we're in this intimate relationship with our body, we begin to hear the subtle communications that comes from our being and that guide us towards the choices, whether they be nutritional or movement or whatever it is that we're doing to care for our body, that are not only most authentic for us, but also most valuable for us at any point in time. The other thing that begins to happen is that our breath naturally begins to be fuller. So when we're not, when we've got a lot of hidden material, undigested material in our body, the breath tends to make itself smaller so as to not disturb these places. So a lot of our emotions get tucked into, the unfelt emotions get tucked into the chest area, to the belly area. And as we tuck these away in these kind of crystallized pockets of energy, the system will subconsciously avoid bumping into them so as to not just disturb them. And once we open to this greater sense of willingness to acknowledge what is living here in our beings, the breath is more likely to expand into those areas, which is, of course, going to help them to liberate themselves as well. So the breath and the energy can start to work together. Not only that, of course, when we're breathing more fully, there's tremendous physical benefits to that as well, in terms of the energy flow, in terms of lymphatic flow, in terms of the taking in of oxygen and nutrients, and the removal of toxins, and all of those many physiological things that happen when the breath is fuller. So this opening to the whole body invites the breath to start to become more of an ally in this process as it begins to move into those areas and massage them and caress them and let them know that we're here, we're present, we want to welcome them into the folds of our awareness. The other thing is that we have a lot of our life force, meaning our energy, is tied up in keeping those pockets of energy, those emotions that have felt wrong or scary. A lot of our energy is tied up in pushing them down, pushing them away, pushing them out of consciousness. And when we begin to open to the whole range of what is found here in the body, there is a freeing up of that energy that's being spent pushing away. And as that energy frees up, then it can move into the flow that is in harmony with life. So the energy that's spent pushing away, when it gets released, can now come back to fuel life itself moving through us, to fuel the soul and its movement and its expression. And not only that, of course, at the end of the day, if we have freed up a lot of energy from this kind of suppression, we tend to have quite a bit more energy. We don't feel exhausted and spent at the end of the day because we have managed our resources, our inner resources well. So the more that we open up to our whole physical experience, the more energy that we have. One of the things that, one of the main reasons why we kind of tuck away and move away from certain sensations and feelings in the body is that we somehow have learned along the way, as we've said, that certain emotions or feelings aren't okay. You know, that it's not okay to feel anxious, or that it's not okay to feel jealous or anger, or, you know, we all have sort of our okay to feel emotions and our not okay to feel emotions. And so a lot of the energy gets tied up in kind of protecting those ones that we don't feel are okay. But what happens in the process of suppressing certain emotions is that we actually begin to tie up the whole emotional system, because they're all running on the same circuitry. So what I mean by that is that when we suppress sadness, then joy becomes less available to us. And when we suppress anger, then tenderness or understanding becomes less available to us. So because it's all running on the same system, you can't selectively suppress certain feelings, which, you know, would be typically called the negative feelings, without also suppressing those feelings of joy and aliveness and love. And so as we begin to free up the body by flooding it with awareness, we also begin to free up the full range of emotions. And of course, that might mean that at some point, in fact, I'm pretty sure it will mean that at some point, some of the feelings that we haven't felt comfortable with will come to the surface and we'll want to move through. But the more that we can work with this, and the more that we can expand our capacity for presence for these things, the more fluid it becomes, the more natural it becomes. The sense of intuition will also increase, and we'll be talking about this a fair bit in Module 4, but intuition to me is the voice of the soul. And as you likely know, when you do get these intuitive hits, they're coming from inside, they're coming from the body, they come through the body. And so the more open that our physical body is, the more likely it is that we're going to hear that usually subtler voice of intuition. And the more that we can begin to have that be our main guide and our main teacher in our lives. And of course, also, the more that we open to our whole sensory experience and allow the body to come to life, it becomes much more pleasant to be in a physical body, which is how it's supposed to be. We're supposed to feel, I feel that our journey here in physical body is supposed to be a delight. And for a lot of us, this isn't what we're experiencing. And so by coming back into the body and opening to it, slowly but surely, it will come to life. It will begin to communicate more clearly with you, and the experience of being in a physical body will become much more pleasant, much more juicy, much more alive, much more sensual. I also feel that this has been my experience. I'm not sure what the mechanism is, but it feels to me that the more connected that we are with our bodies, somehow the more connected that we are with the body of the earth. I just kind of sense that my respect and love and connection with the earth has increased alongside a deeper connection with my own physical body. So, that's my experience here, and perhaps that has been yours as well. So there's this natural care for the body of the earth, and perhaps the body of others as well, as we fall into that within ourselves. So I also wanted to talk this evening about where we tend to get caught in this invitation to flood the body with awareness, to open to include everything that shows up in the body. And so the first thing is that sometimes what we tend to do when we're invited to move into the body and to open to what we feel is that we will try to feel. We try, usually from the mind, to get it right, and we rather than relaxing and opening to the feelings that are here, we get busy looking for the feelings. And sometimes that can block our capacity to actually to feel. So trying is usually our perfectionist nature coming in and trying to do it right. And so my encouragement there is to simply relax and to notice the feelings that are already here. And sometimes, especially when I'm working with a client who seems to be having more of a challenging time connecting to sensation, and sometimes they'll even say things like, well, I'm not feeling anything. So sometimes what I'll do then is I'll say, well, are you feeling your legs on the chair? Oh, yeah, I'm feeling that. Okay, so let's start with that. Just feel that. And are you feeling your feet in your shoes or your feet resting on the floor? Yeah, I'm feeling that. And so you can sort of start with the grosser, more obvious sensations, and that's enough. And even breath can be a really good place to start as well, and you can stay with that for a while. So you're only being asked to be aware of what you're aware of. You don't have to go in and search. The other place where we can tend to get caught is we are letting what we notice in our body fuel a story. So we notice something in our body. So maybe I'm noticing kind of a heaviness in my heart, and maybe I might even call it sadness, which is also something that can tend to get us into the stories. And then I'll start telling a story about why I'm sad, right? So this is so common, and it's why it really is important to be gently persistent about coming back to the body again and again. It's just such a habit to go into the mind's interpretations. So when we feel, we just allow that feeling to be as it is. And if the mind has an opinion or a story about it, we don't have to use our energy to push it away. We can acknowledge that that's there, but we're also remembering that the purpose of coming to the body is to allow it to have a voice too, to allow it to have a presence or an input in our moment. The third way that we might get caught when we are opening to more of a sensory experience in our body is we may think that we're doing it wrong. So sometimes people will say they feel like they're not feeling enough, or that they're feeling numb, and so they must be doing it wrong. Sometimes people will actually say they don't feel anything, and I just spoke about how we can help them with that in terms of just showing them the things that they are feeling. If somebody feels numb, or they say they feel numb, then that's just as valid as feeling anything else. So numbness is an experience. And so we can just notice, oh, certain parts of my body feel numb. And we open to that. We open to that numbness. And often that in and of itself will bring a sense of aliveness, maybe not exactly in that area, but somewhere else. So to feel numbness or to feel a lack of sensation is an experience. And as long as the mind doesn't go into judgment about that, then we can just be with that experience. And that in and of itself will begin to create a friendly environment to explore. Because when we think we're doing something wrong, it's not really welcoming to continue the practice. So essentially, you can't ever do this wrong. It's really just an invitation to go into your body and to notice what you're feeling. And if that's nothing, fine. If that's strong sensations, fine. Another way we can tend to get caught with this practice is trying to get rid of the feeling. So we may not do this consciously, but a lot of times there's some subtle maybe agenda that occurs with this practice. I know myself, I have to be careful about that, because sometimes when I'm doing soul coaching, for example, and I'm guiding someone into their body, I kind of want them to have a positive experience of the sensation decreasing as I lead them through. But ultimately, the idea is to bring presence to the sensations without any expectation whatsoever. Because the expectation itself can create a sense of tension or a sense of trying. And so it's just really, the main thing is just to notice when there are some subtle kind of underlying expectations or agenda or sort of time frames that we're giving our body for it to clear these energies. And there's this feel of meeting the sensation in a way that you let it know as best you can that it has all the time in the world, that you will create space for it as long as it's here, because it's part of you, it's living in you. And the truth is we don't know how quickly something should release. Sometimes there's just there's very slow releases, or sometimes something else has to release first. So there's a great wisdom and intelligence behind the movement of sensations, and to trust that whatever is here needs to be here, and that there's no need to push things along. So wanting to kind of storm the gates of a sensation, to wanting to really kind of get in there and use that kind of more of a masculine type of kind of take control type of energy is something too that will actually create more stuckness in the sensation. So I suggest that you do your best to very gently, very tenderly, very respectfully, very humbly open to the sensations. Humbly in the sense that the sensation is here, and the truth is, I don't know Why it's here, I don't know. How fast it has to move, I don't even know if it has to move or change. So we're trusting the system to find its way. And one other trap that we can tend to get into is that once we start opening up to the sensations in our body, we can tend to hyper focus on them, like a sensation that arises, and we're aware of it, but there's kind of like this hovering over it, waiting for it to do something, right? And so to notice when that happens, and there'll be a sense of kind of tightness when we're doing that, and a sense of almost like too close. And so we can notice the hovering, and sometimes just the noticing of the hovering entices the hovering to let go a little bit, which then allows the sensation to just be within the whole realm of whatever else is happening in our system.